Hello, this is Hybrid here, and I'm coming back at you with another Golden Treasure, the Great Green Secret Ending Speedrun. I've come up with a couple of routing changes and a couple more tricks, so I'm hoping to get this under 1 hour 20 minutes. We shall see. My commentary style this time around will be more towards the speedrunning mechanics and the research that has gone into it, less so about the story. So, let's start a new life here in 3, 2, 1, go. This opening sequence here is mostly on rails. It's mostly about selecting your initial starting stats. I do like to select the quiet sleeping times here so that we get plenty of water mastery, so that we can make an early water check. Otherwise, what we generally want to do here is select the topmost options where possible, and then also be mindful that some of these options play out animations, and while the animations are going, you cannot proceed to the next question. So, although we would prefer a topmost option, if the topmost option has a long animation, then that sort of ruins the point as far as proceeding through this as quickly as possible. I like right there, Relieved to be Alone has no animation, and it is the top option. That's what we like to see, but the top option is subjectively the best one, or objectively. Subjectively and objectively the best one is what we want to look for. So we got through that pretty fast. Also, the water mastery allows for a choice here for escaping the chamber without any energy loss. There are other things that can slow you down a little bit. Whenever you gain some stats or whenever you lose some energy, there's also this little pause. It's not usually a huge deal, but whenever you can avoid that... I mean, you're getting stat gains all the time, so like right there, it plays out that little animation, and there's this little pause, as compared to if there wasn't. It's just, where possible, if you have the choice between no stat gain and a stat gain, or no energy loss and an energy loss, you want to take whatever doesn't have those animations. It does add up. This game is all about clicking through text, so every time you can save a second here or a second there. So like right here, I select attempt to get it to divulge a secret because there's no stat gain involved in it. So even though it's the third option, it is slightly faster. Now we actually want to get killed here for the tarot card, so we're just gonna go through that. I think this is a little bit annoying to have to go through each speedrun. So I know that, like, Ludwig was trying to give this whole message about how death is not a failure and it's part of life and it's okay, but, like, come on. Could have at least added a mode where you don't have 3 lives, right? It'd be great to speedrun along an Iron Man mode because I'm never at risk of dying in the speedrun. It's extremely consistent. So I don't really need the extra lives, and it's just a slowdown for reaching this tarot card. But we gotta do it. There's not really any other place that's very convenient to get this tarot card. Ordinarily, you would have to die in combat, which takes an enormously long time, or find one of the other insta-kills, which are very buried. Also, if you die anywhere else in the game, then it sends you back to your lair and gives you this little speech about how what you saw, what did not actually happen, but was just a dream of the future. Whereas right there, it just sends you back to the last scene and doesn't say any of that speech. So it's an extremely convenient, by far, point to get that tarot card. Okay, so we're going to restart hatching out of the egg with 15 fire, 13 water, and the rest of the earth. Okay. And conveniently, one of the tarot cards is the chariot for making it from outside of your egg to the Grand Moot in one continuous life. And luckily, it counts when you start here. You don't have to start at the very beginning and go through all that on-rails question answering and stat gaining again, because that would be slow. Everything we're doing right here is mostly reasonable. Climbing down the cliff is slightly faster, so we want to do that. And we don't want to go to the water in the scene before, because that takes a long time too. It's a whole nother scene. We do need to get the jerk bird over here to divulge a secret, so that we can get the crystal fang. This is far, far better. It's pretty much required for the speedrun, actually. There's not really any way around it. So we sneak close, and look close. And while the item is popping up, you can actually keep selecting options over here. Little time save that I just recently discovered. We're going to be doing that at every possible opportunity whenever an item pops up. You can just keep clicking down here. Alright, some intricate clicking over here. The arrow keeps popping up and down, like it's trying to get away from you. Okay, and then we sing a song to fire. Just because of the way my stats are set up, we do need the fire points. It's also very convenient. It's the top option. Of course, because I could freely assign my stats, I could just give myself 5 more fire and take it away from something else and sing a hymn to something else. Probably Earth, so that you sing a song to Earth. Not really necessary to do that. It's much better for it to be a song to fire, because it's the top option. Now, when we're talking to Darktooth, I've decided, just for the sake of convenience, that it's best to just select the second options each time. I haven't really done a super deep amount of research as to whether any of the top options would be viable. It's more like I just found something that worked and said, yeah, that's easy to remember, let's go along with it. If you're trying to beat this time or save a couple more seconds, then maybe you could look into which other options might be viable. So our first order of business, of course, is to get our energy a little bit more full, and we go over. We handle that by going over to these playing children and ambushing one of them and eating them alive, because dragon. It's a pretty overpowered choice, because you get a bunch of energy, you get the amber circle, and the downside, of course, is that you lose some time in part 1. That's like, you accomplish so much. Alright, a lot of intricate clicking here, so 1 second. So that's actually really important as far as our stats are concerned. We need to have enough fire and enough water in order to get the shake stick. You notice it's pretty much one of the first things that we do. We aren't doing any other stat gains, so we're just barely meeting those stat requirements. Alright, we get some shiny stones so that we can go and identify the shake stick from Darktooth. He does charge 5 shinies for that. So, interesting object, shake stick, and then would you like to trade? I have an object to aid in your gathering of knowledge, shake stick. Right, and then we ask him about the topics. You can actually click on this arrow before it really truly appears. So if you're very, very consistent about it, then you could save several seconds throughout the entire run. I'm not always super good about it, but I do try. Okay, so we got a whole bunch of stats. Our next goal is to get to water level 3, because that unlocks the combat ability Pacify, which we will use against the badger. So we're going to go over to this water spirit, which serves really quite a number of purposes. For one thing, you actually get energy gains by going over here as you sort of incidentally catch fish that happen to be nearby. And you also get the obstinate stone, which we do absolutely require in order to meet the salamanders and get the achievement over there. So this is the third option. Went around it. But you get a whole bunch of water mastery too. it's just overall, even in a casual play, a really, really nice series of events. You get lots and lots of water mastery. You get the obstinate stone. It preserves your energy. It's a pretty good deal. Cannot be destroyed. This over here, I've been kind of wondering lately if it's better to leave the wood strider there, but it would be so close to having you starve to death. I'm not real sure. Red essence. Because you get ill either way. That was another time where the item was popping up and I was still clicking on the text, so that easily saved like a couple of seconds right there. Since you get ill either way, it's just the number of days that you are resting. It seems like if you could get away with not eating it and still not starve to death as we do what we need to do. But I don't know, it seems really close to me, even having not tried it. We absolutely don't want to go visit Darktooth to cure it, because that hurts you. You would have to rest that away anyway. We don't have much other use for our shiny things. You do have to pay him a little bit, but it actually causes you injury, so that's no good. Alright, so we uncovered that fog, and we're just going to rest 3 days, I believe it is. Because while you are ill, your stats are cut in half, I believe. It's pretty brutal. You become pretty much useless in combat and in stat check events. In a casual play, you definitely still want to go out and about and just uncover fog or do things that aren't reliant on your stats. You don't really want to waste the time. But in a speedrun, we have more time than we need. So we go over to here to this badger who wants to die in glorious battle. And there is nothing more glorious than battle with a drac. But we're going to totally cheese him by using Pacify and Power Strike. That is 100% consistent. The badger actually always has the same opening move. It always opens with Intimidate. And then, because you use Pacify and it successfully disables his fire abilities, he's stuck using only air from that point onward. And because your fire attacks are strong against air, you kind of nip him to death with your tiny, tiny little hatchling dragon teeth. And it is 100% consistent and plays out exactly the same every time. If your stats are higher, especially your Earth stat, you could just spam Flowing Strike at him and win that way. That's usually how I did it in the past. But with our stats pretty low, we have to use the little Pacify trick. So down here, we're hoping for only one random encounter. It's very, very rare to only get one random encounter. I have gotten it before. Once. In all the times that I've speedrun this, I've gotten one random encounter one time. You usually get two. It doesn't really matter which random encounter you get. They're all about the same. Like, even though this takes only one attack to kill, it has this pop-up for getting the grenade, which is kind of slow. Probably the worst would be the blue rat. I don't know that they actually pop up before you've seen the mushroom. I don't think I've ever actually seen one on a speedrun. I think you might have to see the mushroom first before they appear. So that was 2 random encounters, which is pretty typical. I mean, it's either 1 or 2. I've never had 3. There's just not enough time for it. Alright, I gotta do a lot of very precise clicks here, so 1 second. There's a lot There's a lot I need to keep track of in a very short amount of time, so... Okay, that was pretty good. In fact, that's about as good as it gets, and I did that pretty fast. So there's sort of there's 6 attacks that the salamander can do, and you have to be prepared for all of them. But there's 3 sort of outcomes as far as speed goes. The first outcome is the best outcome, that you kill it in 2 attacks, which I did, and I did it pretty much as fast as you can do. The second best outcome is that you kill it in 3 attacks, which is very possible. And the third outcome is that they use Burning Breath, and that puts you in an unwinnable state, and you have to exit out to the main menu and come back. So I actually got the best result there, which is quite a time saver. So now we're going to riddle with twist. Fire. Water. Alright, good deal. So far, so good. This has been a pretty smooth part 1. It would be ideal to get only 1 random encounter in the maze, but that's a lot to hope for, as that's a very, very low percentage chance. We had, I would say, best possible luck against the salamanders, so that went pretty fast. Those are the only 2 RNG points. Yeah, just the random encounter and then what the salamander does. The badger is 100% consistent, so there's no RNG on that. So, pretty good RNG. Not the absolute best, but I would say better than average. So we are so far so good. However, the biggest RNG coming up is the math questions, and I can easily slow you down an enormous amount. All of the worst RNG is during the Great Lesson, so... Ooh, I forgot to use the Crystal Fang. Luckily I had enough fire there to take that out. That was almost a mistake. I thought something was wrong. Like, my energy is kind of high, isn't it? What is this? We are okay. There are some things you have to do in a certain order, and some things where the order doesn't matter quite that much. Luckily, the order did not matter there. That is a misclick. Not too bad. I'm not concerned about tiny misclicks. This is more of a proof of concept about the new routing. It is very, very difficult to do this run absolutely flawlessly. You have to click precisely so many times. It may not be execution-based like a platforming game, but... It may not be like frame-perfect execution like you might see in other speed games, but just the sheer volume of stuff that you have to click on precisely is kind of intimidating, really. And there's some places where if you misclick, your run is just, like, over. There's some places where if you misclick, it's not so bad. You could... like, just misclicking on the map is not a big deal. But there are some text options that could just instantly lock you out of the path that you're supposed to take. I have certainly been there lately. Alright, so at this point we're just uncovering 3 portions of fog on the map. We just want to use some of our energy because we're going to have our energy set to 100% when we ask the School of Faith for some food. So it's good to be efficient. If we didn't do this, then our energy would be cut kind of close later on. It seems like maybe you could get away with uncovering 2 pieces of fog, but it's pretty narrow as far as efficiency goes. There's always a way around it. If we ran out of energy, like if the routing left us with no energy and no other recourse, we could go get the energy from somewhere else, but it would take extra time, and that wouldn't be so good. Alright, so we come over to Darktooth and ask him about his normal topics for the stat gains. I haven't done super careful research about exactly which of these stat gains are really required. You might be able to skip 1 or 2 of them or something, but they go by so fast, it's not really that much of a time save in any case. And then we come over here to this bird, who asks if we are wise and if we know the great truth, and we say no. We are not very smart. And he says, correct. Alright, I don't want to lose my spot in this, so 1 second while I traverse this cave. This is always the same, so it's just a matter of following the most efficient path. For the record, I really hate mazes in adventure games. I think they're just terrible. No adventure game should ever have a maze. Ever. And if they do have a maze, then there should be an option to skip it. Okay, and then there is some RNG here as far as which order these pictures are in. So let me just concentrate here. Hopefully we get a good order. This has not been a good order. It's actually probably one of the worst orders that I've seen, but that's alright. We got through it. Okay, now the math questions. This is always really random, but I'm gonna try. I know math, I know math. We're gonna be fine. Well, if you're gonna mess up on the first one. What? Okay, yeah, obviously that was bad to mess up twice, and then that third set was ridiculously easy. If I had just gotten that third set off the bat, then that would have been fine. Okay, that was a little bit on the slow side, but sometimes there's just no helping it. So right here, you do have to ask him about all 3 top topics, and then, again, the top topic becomes ask for his blessing. So and then you select the third, and then the first, and then the first. And you say, give me your blessing or I will kill you. He says, if you kill me, then how am I going to enjoy my sand? it's pretty good. Okay, so the School of Emptiness here, he asks you to define a drac, and you have to give any answer before you get the correct answer, which is to give up. So we picked the top option and then the last option. That was a misclick. You can actually ask for his blessing straight away. That was okay, just lost a couple of seconds there. These random math questions, you can give any answer. It doesn't even hurt you. It's just, there's not really any point to it. Okay, so the School of Faith, we select the second option twice, which uncovers the option to ask for their blessing. And we don't ask for their blessing right away because that will kick you out. You want to ask for food twice. So, second, first, faith. Pretty clean School of Faith. And then the School of Faith is the closest to the exit. You just go right, left from the School of Faith, where you answer yes to this guy because he's asking if you want to continue. And then for the four instructors, we answer no as to whether we want to follow their philosophy. And then the reason we give is just the top one, because the top one is the fastest. They give different stat gains, but the top stat gain is acceptable. At this point, our stats are pretty good. It doesn't matter too much. We do have stat checks, but we generally meet them pretty comfortably because all of our stats are about equal and all of them are about pretty decent. That was another occasion of while the item is popping up, you can continue scrolling some text. You are locked until the tarot card finishes its little animation, but the sooner you can get the tarot card to pop up in the first place, the better. Okay, now there's some leeway as to when, as to the order you can do these events in. I like to do the Wolf Feast first because it is reliant on your energy. You have to have above 50% energy to successfully resolve this. So while our energy is very high, very comfortably above 50%, we can just take care of that. And then the Wolf Den can result in you getting injured. So we want to get that over with and then do other stuff while we are healing in case we got injured. Now, a little bit of RNG here, you can win in 1 or 2 attacks. It's not really a big deal, so that's a 2-attack win. It's not really a big deal. It is better to win in 1 attack, of course, but I mean, we're talking about a second or 2 in terms of actual time loss. So it's just a time saver. It doesn't really matter in the long run. If you're going for some sort of world record, you know, maximum possible pace, then you would definitely want to hope for favorable RNG there. But there's so many spots of RNG, and the biggest RNG is still going to be the order of the cave paintings and the math questions. The math questions account for so much. We had such a bad math question session. If I'm not concerned about that, then I'm not concerned about taking 2 attacks to beat a wolf. So we are uncovering this fog over here because we do need to, 2 things, heal up, because while we are injured our stats are decreased, so we can't meet necessary stat checks in certain places. Mainly for approaching the Spirit of the Great Green. And then we do also need to go get the Living Labyrinth from Fathom, as that will be useful a little bit later. In order to kind of cheese our way through the Compassion ending, we just need the water stats that the Living Labyrinth gives you. There's not really any other good source of them, and not really any other fast way to complete the Compassion ending. If the Living Labyrinth didn't exist in this game, and you had no way to increase your water stats, it'd be very, very difficult to speedrun. Leaf. Web. Snow. I think that was a little bit slow. I was kind of distracting myself. Okay, now that that is taken care of, we are going to take care of bringing the deer back to the spirit wood. Now, as far as this rat stealing your shiny things go, you pick the top option for a couple of reasons. There's no stat gain, there's no survival point gain or anything like that. It's the top option, so we like that. And although we're agreeing to the quest, and even though we have no intent to actually carry out the quest, it doesn't tack anything on to the end. There's no energy gain, there's no stat gain, there's nothing. Okay, so you do have to go see the dream, and you do have to go hang on to it in order to actually resolve the deer quest. If you don't, you can still go take care of the saber-toothed tiger spirit. If you don't watch the dream, or if you ignore the dream, you can still go fight the saber-toothed tiger. But the deer don't actually appear unless you have that dream. So you do have to go watch that, even though it doesn't really seem to have any effect at first glance. Because we are in good shape now, we can meet all of these stat checks, and we just have to go over here and talk to the spirit. Now, the spirit does a lot of things for us. It gives us a lot of stats, and gives us a tarot card, so obviously that's important. And then we do have to do this first before going to the saber-toothed tiger, because going here unlocks the option to go on an essence quest, where we don't have to fight the saber-toothed tiger in combat. It also passes 3 days, which is good for a speedrun. Kind of bad for a casual player, like, oh, waste 3 days, that doesn't feel very good. But on a speedrun, we do need to pass those days, because we have way more days than we need. So we select all of the second options where available. And then once we go talk to the spirit, then we select the top option when we come back. Just as long as you select one of the colored options that's based off of a stat check, you are fine. Otherwise, your option of last resort, if you can't meet any of the stat checks, puts you into crippled state, which is pretty bad. You got to be very careful about what you select there, because if you misclick, then the deer will get offended and leave. Luckily, I have not actually misclicked there. Okay, so I think Flare ordinarily popped up soon, but now we deal with the Brightlings, because we do need to get the 50% Wolf Mastery before doing the final Wolf event. Now, as far as the options to select here, I just select the top one of Observe them and then let them touch me. There's a couple other things that are also okay. You can bring them a flower, you can stand and watch them. I think that option set is okay. I don't know if there's really anything better. If there is, then it's only going to be a very, very tiny time save. So over here, we select the last option, and then the second to last option to breathe fire on the trees, because the last option is leave. And then left, left, right, right, left, left, right, left, middle. I have committed that to memory. And usually Flare pops up at this point. So, hello Flare. I have had Flare pop up a day early. I'm not exactly sure what caused that, but that's pretty convenient, because Flare actually preempts the Elfdrack event. So I just have to waste a day here. It's not really wasting a day. I mean, I would rest sooner or later to pass a day. I guess it doesn't really matter in the long run. But you just select the last options. And then it gives you a set of 3, so you want to select the top options, because top option is always fastest. And then next time it gives you a set of 3, you select the middle option, because that is the one for Animal Mastery. And I really like how the icons keep flying over on the left side of the screen, even if you mash your way through this and it transitions back to your layer. They just keep going. They don't care, man. It's amazing. Okay, now we go to the last wolf event. I also like how in this event you can just leave. This is like you see a wolf traveling out on its own, and you leave. That's the wolf event. You can actually do that a lot, and it very often gives you Earth Mastery. Just for not caring about things. So we fight one of the wolves, and it's just the same as the last wolf battle. Well, exactly the same, because we had the same RNG. So it was another two attack kill on that. Once again, as the item is popping up, we can scroll through the text. Bit of a time save there. And now we don't have anything else that we're doing in part 2. Yeah, so the only thing that remains is, for one thing, making sure we don't starve to death. And then, of course, we will soon be approached by Bloom, who we scare away with our wolves, and Whisper, who we get a sneak attack on with our bat friends. At this point, if you're watching this on YouTube or something, you can probably just scroll ahead. The only thing I have to remark on, as far as speedrunning goes, is that when you are getting a sneak attack on Whisper, you want to make sure to just click 4 times after selecting Bats or Intuition or whatever, because as soon as you click that 4th time, it starts the sneak attack minigame. And if you just mash through and click 5 times, then it'll count that as a sneak attack. And you will fail the sneak attack, and you will have to fight Whisper. Which would be bad during a speedrun like this. If you were in some sort of marathon setting where you couldn't go back, it's not a huge deal to fight Whisper as a backup plan. Just want to be sure to select the second option here. If you select the first or third, then you end up fighting Bloom, which is fine. Bloom is not very difficult, again, but that's not really what we want to see. We don't want to take the time out. But between winning instantly and fighting Bloom, of course you want to win instantly, don't you? My favorite part of Whisper is actually in the dialogue when he suddenly gets right up in your face. Unfortunately, we don't see that in the speedrun. He only does it during certain dialogue choices. But I just think it's really funny. He's just suddenly invading your personal space. Doesn't even care. Another thing of note for speedrunning in general is that during these day transitions, you want to mash as much as possible, because there is a certain point where it becomes skippable, like when the line gets drawn to almost a semicircle there, or a little arc. During my Questing for Glory speedrun, Questing for Glory 3, I actually didn't really do a terribly good job of mashing through the screen transitions. But over time, there's a lot of frames to be saved, because you see it so many times, so you can very, very consistently get it fast. It can save you an enormous amount of time. Alright, so call in our bat friends and click 4 times. And get the sneak attack. And we are good. Yeah, my Questing for Glory 3 speedrun actually ended up being a lot slower than I thought. It ended up being like 30 seconds slower than my previous best. And a lot of it was from just not mashing correctly during the screen transitions. The day transitions. It's pretty surprising exactly how many seconds you can save just by doing it well. Okay, once we reach part 3, there is also not a whole lot to do for the Wisdom speedrun, because by completing the Great Lesson, we are pretty much set for it. It's just 20 days from the start of part 3 to the Grand Moot. On day 5, you have the event with the poachers, which we ignore. On day 10, you have the event with the trees being chopped down, which we ignore. Soon after that, like on day 11 or 12, I think, the silver fruit activates, and we select the third option to imply that we are sentient. It asks you several questions, it shows you the pictures, and you select the third option each time. And what that does is it passes an extra 4 days, which is what we want. We want to pass time. And then that'll bring you to about day 15, 16 in that area, and the Mayfly event will activate. And actually you want to tell it the meaning of life is wisdom, because if you eat it, then it increases your survival points, and it's going to increase it enough that many times Bird invites us to his trial, which is not what we want, because just the sheer amount of time of the screen transition and scrolling through his text and dismissing it is far more than the time that we save from eating the sunfly. So, a little bit of boring time here. Since I just explained everything that I'm doing up to the moot, I'm just going to stay quiet for a little while. You can go ahead and move the video forward to the moot. One thing to note is because the silver fruit event does set your energy to be very low, we don't necessarily need to be quite so aggressive about consume self. Also, the presence of the wolves reduces your energy loss each day. So I did use consume self once, just at the start, because my energy starts pretty low. But we don't need to go crazy about it. And of course, because our energy is very low, you do want to consume self here, or else you kind of risk starving to death. I'm not sure that you would, with the presence of the wolves. And again, answer wisdom here. The wolves might keep you from dying, but it'd be pretty close. One little aside, when you've played through the entire game like this, or especially part 2, you gain so much reputation, and the favor of the 3 elders is partially based off of your reputation. And just by going through the Great Lesson and defeating all your Drac rivals, it gives you a ridiculous amount of favor with all 3. When they release the modding tools, I'm going to investigate changing that around, so that just by playing the game, you don't get favor with all 3 of them. Like, make it a little bit harder to get favor. It's really weird that reputation is generally gained by... Well, it's gained through so many things. It really has little to do with what Darktooth likes, which is wisdom. And Darktooth boops Many Times Burned on the snoot and says, "No, be quiet." No, but so it's supposed to be survival points makes Many Times Burned happy, and compassion points makes Allmother happy. So you would think that reputation makes Darktooth happy, but you get reputation for all sorts of things. Yes, you get it for wise actions, but you get it for anything that would logically make you more reputable, like defeating your Drac rivals. Even though there's nothing really wise about that as such. I suppose you could construe it in some way to be wise, but... Okay, so we are doing the compassion ending next, where we just need... 1 second. Okay, so that's 60 fire so that we can consume self. And then the rest into water, because we do need 100 water in order to actually complete the compassion ending. And then we just need the living labyrinth. So we are going to do Allmother's Ant Trial, and sort of the strategy here is to consume self so that we have plenty of energy going forward, and then use the living labyrinth. And what happens is, because consume self injures you and reduces your water points, it delays the time it takes for Allmother to actually invite you to the Ant Trial. So when we actually get the invitation, because our health state ends up going back into healthy, when we get the invitation, that actually indicates that we have enough water. Although we're not going to have 100 water going into the Ant Trial, we get a lot of water points from completing the trial. So it all ends up working out, and it's very easy to remember. I believe that's level 9 right there, and we definitely get 10 points or so from completing the trial. And Bride in question is still quite the silver fox. Now, there's 3 paths in here, and I've been kind of wondering lately whether it's better to do water first or aphids first. Water, the option is the top option, which we do like, but I'm just so used to doing aphids. Maybe it's wrong, maybe I should change my ways. Also right here, you always gotta remember to move eggs. If you do not move eggs, then the sequence does not end. I'm just so used to doing the aphid path first. It's actually because there are some termites over here that are very easy to defeat and can give you some energy. When I was first making this route, I thought that you needed to go eat a lot of termites. It's like, oh, we need to stock up on energy. This is very time intensive. Turns out you don't actually need to eat any termites. So, random encounters here. You're generally looking at 1 or 2 random encounters in total. Your first random encounter doesn't matter, although Feastling is technically the worst thing that you can face. As long as you face it first, there's enough time to heal afterwards. And it ends up being actually okay. Like, I'm battered right now, which is not normally very good, but we're just gonna heal later. And ideally, we do not want to get another random encounter, but if we do get another one that's not a feastling, then that's okay. Even if we do get another feastling, it slows you down a little bit, but that's really all. It means you're quite likely to get 3 deaths against the giant squirrel. So it's a little bit of RNG, but I've never actually gotten killed before the giant squirrel, so it's just a matter of saving a little bit of time here and there. Also, the paths, you just want to hang a right. On the aphid path, you want to go straight until the second opportunity to go left. So that's how you handle that. For the water and food paths, you just hang a right. And you will be okay. So when you follow this process, it's very, very consistent. I've never actually died before the squirrel following this exact process of getting a few friends against the antlion, and then many friends against the mantis. And as I mentioned in my last video, you don't want to go for the food on the first or second runs, because it does not teleport you back to the hive. So that's 2 random encounters, which is not so good. At least it's just a small bug instead of a feastling. I think the springtail is pretty much the best possible opponent. It doesn't really hurt you at all. It doesn't really do anything. So I would call that average luck. I also like how the mantis makes this sharp sword metal on metal sound. It's really nice. Yeah, you just want to gather a lot of friends against the Shredder. I've actually died against it with only a few friends. I'm not exactly sure what happened. It must have just been some unlucky attack order. And as far as the squirrel goes, it's pretty much random. Spamming Power Strike is the way to go. You're always looking at least 1 death. What you hope for is to kill it before you reach 2 deaths. That could go either way. Nope. Okay, so we killed it now. I would call that the sort of straight down the middle average result, where we got 2 deaths and then immediately beat it on the next attack. It is definitely possible, somewhat uncommon, but possible to beat it after 1 death only. And if you are pretty unlucky, then you can get up to 3 deaths. Usually if a feastling is your second random encounter, that's going to be what you're looking at, because you go into that battle injured. And while you were injured, you were doing much less damage, because it reduces your fire stat. So I would call that altogether a fairly average result. That entire sequence can definitely go a bit faster. If you only get 1 random encounter, if you beat the squirrel fast, that is what you were hoping for. We got 2 random encounters and had 2 deaths. Very, very average. Very middle of the road. And with that, we are all set for the compassion ending. There's 2 ways to actually get into the compassion ending in the first place. You either need negative favor with All-Mother, so that it sort of abuses a bug. No pun intended. You can either abuse a bug, or abuse bugs. Hee hee. See what I did there? Or have a lot of favor. By completing the trial, you get like +10 favor. Normally you get favor with All-Mother by actually doing compassionate actions throughout the game. So compassion points translate into favor. But just by doing the trial... No matter how self-centered, no matter how much of a survivalist you were throughout the game, as long as you do the trial, All Mother just thinks the world of you. And so there's two things about doing the trial this early. That was not actually my original setup. Originally I abused the bug, but then I kind of realized that the extra 3 days for delaying the moot sort of is counterproductive when you need to do the trial anyway for the achievement. And actually if we do it now, then we get the Sun Tarot card, which gives you some extra fire points and unlocks the ability to get level 10 fire during the survival run. And we are pretty low on energy, so we do need to consume self here. And when you have the possibility of getting level 10 fire during the survival run, that can save an enormous amount of time too. So, although your basic requirement for the secret ending is to collect all the tarot cards, we're really looking for each of our mandatory actions to also do as much as possible. That yes, we get a tarot card, but we're getting stat boosts too that are going to extend onto the next life. Also, I like the first thing Many Times Burned says here. He says, "The end, I've smelled it." It is a very smelly future. The dragons very habitually use the word smell metaphorically instead of look or see. But I think on that occasion it's a little too silly. I have smelled the smelly future. Normally you would say, like, somebody who is, like, psychic or whatever can see the future, but no. Psychic dragons smell the future. Okay, now we are doing survival. And we want some water, and plenty of fire, and plenty of earth. I think that's enough water. I'm a little slow on my button mashing today. Alright, we want Crystal Fang and Bloodstone. Now, before, when I was doing the Dark Spine strategy, I didn't actually take the Crystal Fang here, because there was really no particular need. But the Crystal Fang is going to be what actually gets us to level 10 fire. We're going to go ahead and use it up front, because stat gains are stat gains, and I do not say no to stat gains. And I haven't extensively tested this, but also Many Times Burned invites us to the trial, which is what we want. I haven't extensively tested this, but I go ahead and Lucid Dream Earth here just for safety. It might not be necessary. I just want to be absolutely sure in case anything goes wrong. Because you definitely do not want to fail the trial. I would say if you were really going for a world record time, and that's certainly possible with some of the average luck that we've had here. You may want to try not lucid dreaming Earth, and kind of see what happens. Alright, so in my last video, we want to make sure that we make the correct responses here. Top response, test my might, gives you some fire. Yes. Now, in my last video, we fought all of these opponents twice, and then ate them because dragon. We are not going to do that this time, because dragon. That doesn't really work as well, does it? We're going to pass them by, because dragon. Well, you know that game, Choice of the Dragon? By Choice of Games? One of your stats is Disdain, where it's your stat about not caring about things. We are practicing our Disdain here. And just the sheer amount of time saved with all the screen transitions and clicking on Power Strike and all that, and not having to listen to the entirety of their stories about why they're fighting and stuff, it really saves quite an enormous amount of time. Now this guy, sometimes you one-shot him and sometimes you don't, so we'll see. Alright, good. If he starts with a water move, you can actually survive your first attack. Now, I have always two-shot, never ever, every time. I'm also not clear on why he messes with your interface. It goes unexplained. But I always beat never ever in two shots. I've never beat him in 1 or 3. With this strategy, I mean. Of course, if you're not doing speedrun strats, of course, different things can happen. So, in addition to bypassing all of the opponents very quickly, and not getting the Darkspine, it does mean that we don't have to see the Darkspine animation, which saves a couple of seconds there as well. So, a lot of time saved all around by not having to get the Darkspine. And now we are just going to rest. There is nothing else we need to do. We actually don't need to consume self anymore because of the tarot card, the star. The star that you get by completing the compassion ending is supposed to reduce your energy loss each day. It has apparently the unintended side effect of disallowing you to die by starvation. I hope they don't fix that, because I think it's a nice reward. In a casual play, if you were doing a blind casual play, the compassion ending is the hardest to actually achieve. It's not so hard if you know the requirements, because you just use the Living Labyrinth to get to 100 water, no big deal. Go complete the trial, no big deal. But on a blind casual play, it is the hardest to achieve. So I think it's a nice little reward to say, hey look, you completed the most difficult main ending. We're going to have a really nice reward for you. You no longer starve to death. So I hope they keep that bug in there, or make it official. If I ever, if the modding tools allowed, if they fixed it, but the modding tools allowed to put it back the way that it was, then I'd put it back the way that it was, really. And just update the text to say, you can no longer die of starvation. That's my opinion on it anyway. And it's good for a speedrun because, although consume self only takes a little bit of time, hey, it's another second or two saved. Maybe 3 or 4 seconds if you can avoid using consume self like twice throughout this entire sequence. So normally you would gain a little bit of fire stat there, but we are at fire 10, so that means we are good to go. This is the biggest time save over my last run, where we spent an enormous amount of time beating all the opponents twice and getting the Darkspine. We are pretty close to the moot, and then we'll pick survival and skip the final combat. We must avoid the smelly future. And it also amuses me how this one village is the difference between extinction of dragons and extinction of humans. So just by destroying this one village, everything is okay. It's also a little bit strange how it kind of hangs on the screen for an extra few seconds. I don't really know what's up with that. It only seems to happen when you use the True Song of Destruction. It could be that some sort of animation is playing that's like an invisible animation, and it's waiting for this invisible animation to play out. That's the only thing I can really think. Okay, now we are doing the final run for the secret ending. And we want to arrange our stats in a very specific way. I start on Earth and go clockwise. And then once we are nearly out of points to assign, we take away 1 point from fire and add it to water, and then put the rest into air. So here is where we're almost out of points. Okay, wasn't too bad. Now we need Shake Stick, False Face, Crystal Fang, Amber Circle, and Bezoar. And we're going to concentrate very hard on clicking the correct things because now we are in very serious time. I was actually doing pretty well yesterday on another speedrun and accidentally misclicked, and it sort of ruined everything. So let's not do that again. So over here, we just want to pass by. It used to be, in one of the really old versions for this, I fought the dogs and went inside the hut, and none of that is actually necessary. You can just pass right by. Because it unlocks some more areas, so you have to go there. Alright, so the sheep, we gotta answer their question with no. Let's not say yes this time. Okay, and then the third option. If you just keep selecting the third option, it gives me what I need. Okay, and then we go to the burial scene. Now, the stuff that I'm doing doesn't really seem important at first, but it's giving me human knowledge, which we do need a little bit later to get inside a building, and gives me a little bit of stat points. Like, gives me some earth, and gives me mostly the human knowledge, because one of the buildings is barred by human knowledge. Okay, let's go ahead and use the Crystal Fang as well, because we want to make sure we have lots of stats. And then we're going to go fight Tempest. Tempest has always cooperated on the speedrun. It's been very, very consistent. Surprisingly so. It's always played out the same way. You just use Power Strike here, and that's fine. And then in the underwater portion, actually every single time I've done this, Tempest just uses 2 air attacks. So I'm not entirely sure if it's on a script or what. It might be that Tempest always starts with 2 air attacks, in which case you should always just open with Power Strike. I've never actually seen Tempest do anything other than opening with 2 air attacks. Most opponents do open with a random move in their rotation, and then of course some are unpredictable. Like, all of your human opponents will always do something random. And actually the tutorial notes this. It says some opponents may not play by the normal rules. But there are some opponents, especially bosses, like during the Many Times Burned trial, and some of these dragons like Vantage and Tempest, who open with specific moves. The Badger actually also opens, the Valhalla Badger actually always opens with Intimidate as well. And then once it's done with its opening moves, then it falls into a rotation, or falls into unpredictability. Okay, so I'm actually leaving the gem behind, even though that's a little bit slower. In my last speedrun, it really made me nervous that you go down to crippled state. I have not tested that extensively, and I'm not willing to take the risk here. But the Dwarven sphere, although it hurts you, it's much slower to refuse them. So we don't want to do that. Okay, so see, because I get injured there, I get down to injured state. If you take the crystal, then you're definitely going down to crippled, and it starts getting very, very dangerous because of the stat reduction. So, although you can survive, it feels very close. I'd want to test that, like, so many times before I really commit to it. Okay, now that we have unlocked both territories, we can go to the trading post. I'm actually going to do something new here that I haven't done before. When you sell the false face sells for a lot more, even though it's not the top option. But just the animation time of all these shiny things going over to the right over there takes a pretty long time. Yeah, I think that ends up being faster. Normally you'd want to select the top option, which is the shake stick, but the shake stick is only worth 200? No, sorry, it's worth 100. Whereas the false face is worth 250. So that's that much more time that it takes for all the false face money to go over there. So you definitely want to do the false face first, even though it's not the top option. I think that saves a couple of seconds. So we leave, and we let it stand. Any misclick here could spell disaster. These stakes are very high. Didn't I kill you before? The artist is supposed to be the lone child that you see as a hatchling, and since you can kill that child and eat it alive and steal its necklace, it's a little bit weird how the artist still manages to appear. I know we've restarted a few times and we're in a different life, but even if you are continuing on straight, he's still here. I think it'd be a little bit mean to actually have him not be present just because you made that decision way back when, but it's still like, you kill him and steal his necklace, and then you bring back his necklace, and he's like, oh, I remember you. You ate me. I love you. Let's be friends. Oh, man. I love this game so much. This game is amazing. Even when it lacks logical consistency, it's amazing. Okay, so we gave him the Bezoar as well as 300 shiny things for the other things he was missing. And he says he wants to be friends. And at face value, this kind of looks like it's just compassion points at the cost of reputation and survival, or vice versa. But note that it also said you gained knowledge of a certain mysterious animal or humans. And becoming friends gives you a lot more human knowledge than does not becoming friends. And the human knowledge is critical for getting into the building that we need to get into. As another occasion where an item was popping up, and we were scrolling through text anyway. So now we have sufficient human knowledge in order to get into the building for the final achievement. Well, the final achievement before the Dreaming Door, so our 20th achievement. We also need to go in here and use the elixir for the stat boost. So it gets our stats up to level 10. And for the building, you want to make sure that when you're approaching the building, you select the second option, which is to sneak inside, because the top option is a fight. So stealthily bypass. And then let's go ahead and sneakily open the door. And we don't really need to look at anything in here, so we just leave, and we see Warden's head on the wall. And we just leave it where it is. It's fine. And that is the final achievement. So now the dreaming door shall appear, and we are almost done here. Now, one little trick you can do during the dreaming door sequence is, as the spirits are appearing and disappearing and transitioning and all that, you can actually keep clicking down on the arrows and stuff and keep speeding it along. The text menu disappears and reappears on its own as it sort of cinematically plays out that, oh, the spirit shimmers and disappears, and then here comes the next one. But if you just keep mashing the mouse button, then you can just keep proceeding forward, even though the spirits like kind of overlap each other. You'll see what I'm talking about. But I definitely did not do that last time, as I was stopping to explain what was going on and what the spirits were saying. Now that I'm not talking about the story and just talking about speedrun strats and talking about the speedrun, we are going to do this a little bit faster. And just making sure that we don't mess this up at the last second, just making sure that the numbers are typed in correctly. Okay, so far so good. And we want to select the second options. So nice and fast. And now there's nothing more to do other than scroll through some text, and as soon as the tarot card appears, that is time. I will call it when it does. Very soon. Time. And that is Golden Treasure, the Great Green, Secret Ending Speedrun with the new route, and pretty much as fast as I can do it. We kind of messed up on the math problems and definitely lost some time there. It was very strange. I messed up the first question and then messed up on the second set and then got the third set really, really fast. That's one of the fastest times I've ever gotten on a singular set. So very, very strange timing on that, to make two mistakes and then do the third one the fastest I've ever done. So I would call that, let's say, altogether an average result. We had some bad luck with the wolves. We got 2 random encounters with the ants. We had 2 deaths on the squirrel. I think with better luck, we're probably looking at around 20 seconds faster. But unless there's any other routing changes, I'm going to say the ideal target time is about 20 seconds faster than whatever this was. I'll have to go back and time it. But without any other routing changes, this is the best routing that I know. You could do some riskier plays. You could not rest after fighting the Valhalla Badger. You can not lose a Dream Earth before going to Many Times Burn's Trial. There's some other things that you could do. Maybe bump that up to about 25-30 seconds faster is what would be absolutely possible with best possible luck and with risky plays. I don't know that I'm really going to go for it, but that is where we currently stand on the secret ending speedrun front. So I hope you have enjoyed watching. That is going to be all from me. I'm going to go ahead and let the credits run now, as I like to do after a successful speedrun. But that is all from me. See you next time.